Well, Tasha and Russell, they both love reading books. Tasha and Russell, they both love reading books. Well, what do you do when you share some
Welcome to
love?
the
Well, you start
120th
a club,
episode
you
of the
start a club,
ABC
an
Pod, the
adult
Adult
book
Book
club, an
Club with Taja
adult
and
book
Russell. I am Russell.
club.
She is
And a
Taja.
podcast.
Hey, and welcome back, everybody, to the podcast where we drink and we read things. And on this episode, we read Theo of Golden by Allen Levi. But before we get to that, it has been 2 weeks, Taja. What has been going on in your life?
Oh gosh, a lot of things apparently. There was a surprise cake concert.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so that was really great. I think it was 2 weeks ago, like yeah, right after the last podcast recording, sitting on the couch, got a little email that was like, "Hey, your tickets for cake are ready." And I was like, "My what now?" I had purchased these tickets back in February and had completely forgot about them. Concert was, as most of them are, on a Tuesday night. So that was fun. It was actually really great. The weather was decent. It was actually pretty chilly, but we got some lawn chairs. And we have like an outdoor blanket that we'd had like our chairs on, and then when it got cold, we turned it into like to cover ourselves. It was perfect. Um, yeah, it was a fun show. It would have been really great. He's a very chatty frontman. Um, and it would have been better had it not been like past my bedtime. I would have enjoyed that more, or not a school night, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was awesome. Pretty much just like last summer, almost every weekend has been a washout, and then it's like lovely during the week, except this weekend, and it's like really hot and sunny, which fully summer now, I guess. We just like fast forwarded through spring straight into summer. Um, yeah, and then my aunt and uncle visited this last week from Pennsylvania. It was really great to see them. And oh, the electrician finally billed me. Got it in the mail today. Um,
Jesus.
so that's exciting. And it was less than I think I was expecting. So that's great. Now I
Nice.
have to pay them. Kind of hoping it would just have been free, but
Yeah. I thought we signed up for that free discount. What
yeah,
happened there? Yeah.
yeah.
For me, I started the week last week. You know, I have this issue where I look around the outside of our property and I'm like, that looks like shit. And the only thing I know how to do is build rock walls. So that's what I spent last week doing. This area over by our propane tank out front of the house next to the shed. I've just never liked the way it runs off because it's kind of how they dug it out originally and it just looks like shit. So once we planted the flower bed there, it was like, oh, a nice flower bed, and then shit. So I do this whenever I am plowing or moving stuff or whatever. I create like little piles of rocks, not cairns or whatever they're called, to get very upset and
It's a
knock them over.
collection.
Yeah, just collection. So like I like my little honey pots of rocks. So as I was starting this project, I was like getting all those and putting them out where they needed to go. That got me like maybe halfway through, maybe three quarters at most.
Pretty
So
good.
then I had to go and collect from the road, which actually worked out pretty well because apparently somebody is bringing a modular home past us, like they're building it past us, and the road wasn't wide enough. So some neighbors
Yeah.
went out there with tractors and shit and made the road wider. And what that
That's
meant
not
was
a town road.
it is, and apparently the
Can you
town
do
gave them
that?
the okay to do it as long as the
Okay.
town didn't pay for it.
Oh, sure. That
So
that
yeah,
makes
welcome to rural New Hampshire.
sense.
But because they had done that, there was plenty of rocks to choose from. The weird thing that happened was I was moving this really big one that I was like, oh, this is my cornerstone. And when I went to push it in the truck, I was like, ow, that felt weird on my arm. And then when I pulled it out of the truck, I was like, ow, that feels weird on my shoulder. That still works for another 2 hours. But afterwards, I was like laying down and I didn't have full range of motion in my left shoulder anymore. And as the night went on, it got worse.
Oh,
So
great.
like I was like pinning my arm, like my elbow to my ribs, so I wasn't really moving my shoulder that much because I could get to like here, and then it would be pain, 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 and I could go up there. So
Oh,
it's like I don't know what happened, but I'm gonna sleep on it, and if it's screwed up tomorrow, I'll go to the doctor. So the middle of the night, it was like 4 in the morning, whatever. Amanda rolled over and like knocked her phone onto the floor, which woke both of us up. And when it woke me up, I rolled over, and when I rolled over, I felt my shoulder pop.
Oh, it was out of socket.
Not completely. I think
Okay.
I asked Sully about this, and he's like, I without seeing it, I wouldn't know, but like that sounds like maybe you partially dislocated it,
Dislocated.
or like
Yeah.
just moved it a little bit out, so like you were feeling
Yeah.
experiencing pain because it wasn't
Yeah.
properly
It's like
sitting.
rubbing. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, and as soon as I did it, I was like, oh, and then I was like,
Immediate
I could do
relief.
everything. Like I wasn't in pain just sitting in there, but whenever I tried to move it, so
Yeah.
that was fun. Uh,
Cool.
yeah, this is almost 39 injuries, so that was great. And then I was sitting there because we had band practice on Sunday, and I'm like, I was like like drumming, and I was like, maybe if I keep it tucked, I can just like hit this side. We'll see what happens. So that worked out well. We had practice on Sunday. We have a show this Sunday, so in 2 days. If you're in the Dover area, it is Dover Porch Fest. So
Oh,
it's an outdoor concert all around town in Dover, New Hampshire. We are playing at Seven Snows Court. We have, or like there'll be bands from 1 to 5. There's two bands going ahead of us, and then we'll be on at 3:30. So,
nice.
but it's Soonish's house, so we're gonna have a keg and a tent and shit set up. So
Awesome.
if you're in Dover and you want to come listen to some music and have a beer, feel free to join us there. And then we have another show on the 20. I don't know. I never looked this up ahead of time, but I'll let you know next time. It's like a Thursday, the 24th or something like that. We have another show in Dover. So we got together to practice some songs last week because it had been a while since we did that. We always do that. It's like, hey, we have a show. Should we learn this music again? I guess so.
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah, so we did that. And then yeah, aside from that, it's just been a lot of minor details and trying to figure out future plans. So a lot of
Mhm.
fun stuff happening here. And on that note, this is your reminder to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Oh, speaking of Instagram and Twitter, we also bought some swag this week as a podcast. So if you are watching and are interested in, soon we will have some stickers for the show that we will be more than happy to hand out to whoever you want. And then also we're gonna just make it rain at Dragon Con with all the swag. And for the first time ever, we did swag where we remembered to like put our information on it. So when you look at that, you will know you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Adult Book Club 21. That is all one word, Adult Book Club, and then the number 21. So follow us there, ask for for a sticker, and we'll get you all hooked up with that. So on that note, we again go back to the book, which was Theo of Golden by Allen Levi. Theo of Golden is the first novel published by Levi, but he had previously written a children's book in 2003 called Olivia Town and a memoir in 2014 titled The Last Sweet Mile. Theo of Golden was originally released as a self-published novel in 2023. It was interesting reading more about this. He wrote it and was like, nobody's going to want to read this. Basically printed like two copies, if even that, because he was like, well, I'll just like throw it in a bin, like throw it in a
See what
drawer,
happens.
and it's like something I did, you know? And then his friends apparently were like, dude, that's actually like a pretty good book. Maybe you should do something. Because
Yeah.
he's a lawyer, he's a singer-songwriter, he's like
A judge?
yeah, a man of many different talents here. So anyway, after it was self-published in 2023, with the help of his friends and then his niece especially, they started promoting it, and it gained great popularity through word of mouth. It was then republished in 2025 by Simon and Schuster once they acquired the rights, and then it spent 3 weeks as the number one book on the New York Times bestseller list in March of 2026. And like I said, this popped up because I always look at Goodreads like, what are you going to read this weekend on Twitter, and
Yeah.
this was the book that people just kept posting. So
I mentioned it to my coworker and she's like, I've seen that everywhere. And I was like, funny, I have not seen it everywhere.
yeah, wild. And then like the comparisons to A Man Called Uwe and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
obviously much different character, but kind of the
Sure.
gentleman in his older years trying to
Yeah.
find community or whatever. But before I give it all away, Tasha, if you want to read us the jacket, we will jump into our story.
All right. One spring morning, a stranger arrives in the small southern city of Golden. No one knows where he has come from or why. His name is Theo, and he asks a lot more questions than he answers. Theo visits the local coffee house where 92 pencil portraits hang on the wall, portraits of the people of Golden done by a local artist. He begins purchasing them one at a time and putting them back in the hands of their rightful owners. With each exchange, a story is told, a friendship born, and a life altered. A story of giving and receiving, of seeing and being seen. Theo of Golden is a beautifully crafted novel about the power of creative generosity, the importance of wonder to a purposeful life, and the invisible threads of kindness that bind us to one another.
Nice. And similar to Betty, this story was very much filled with just like kind of vignettes and stories about the people that he meets and all that. So I was funny when I went to put it on Goodreads, like the first person or whatever, one of the first reviews I saw was like, this story didn't really have plot. And it was like, yeah, it does, but
It
I
does.
could see it. It is a little more scattered. So
Yes.
telling Taj before we started recording, I think having read this right after Betty kind of put me in the mood to read that kind of story, which made it a lot easier to get into
Easier.
from the
Yeah,
beginning.
for sure.
So to start, our main character is the secretive Theo. I was wondering what you made of him as we got to know him.
I mean, like, what a sweet man. Like, absolutely. I was saying before we started recording that I am an oversharer. If somebody's like willing to listen and they have the right energy, I'm going to tell them a lot of things. And he is definitely that guy. I would have told Theo all about everything. Yeah, and I was definitely curious about his like secrets and his reason for being in Golden. I think that the author did a really good job with the breadcrumbs for
Mhm.
that aspect of things. I wouldn't call it like super suspenseful or anything like that, but it definitely captured your attention. And yeah, I think he was incredibly believable. Like there was nothing about him. You know, sometimes I think this is mostly with like YA stuff where the protagonist is like 14 and good at everything. Like obviously an older guy who's lived a whole life is going to have a lot more experiences and abilities and stuff that track with being good at everything. But
Yeah.
the way that that unfolded and the way that we learned about Theo was really interesting to kind of try to piece together yourself what or who he could have been before he came to Golden. Yeah, it was a neat little mystery while also feeling like he was an open book, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he was, I think because his emotions were so plain to read,
Yeah.
and like his the reasoning behind everything felt so genuine
And
that you
he's
never questioned it.
absolutely, and like his joy at like the simplest things was
Yeah.
incredibly endearing. Like like
Yeah,
very, very choice. Love his style.
it definitely just felt like an older man. He was 87, great number,
Mhm.
who was just kind of enjoying like the uh
That
not
time of his life.
yeah, the dusk of life or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
And like wanted to pass on like he just wanted to give people, I don't know, pick them up, make their day, make sure that
Yeah.
they like see themselves how he sees them. Like
Yes.
I thought as far as the secretive side, I think that the author did really well giving you those bits and pieces where you would kind of you'd be like, okay, like what's his deal? What's his deal?
Yeah.
But then you get lost in whoever he was talking to,
Yeah.
Minette, and then Tony, and whatever. But he did such a good job of frequently enough being like, oh, and it was, Tony kind of realized that once again, Theo had dodged his
Defeated the
question about
question.
himself,
Yeah.
like moved it back. So there
Yeah.
was always that kind of secrecy. That's not a word. Secrecy. Wow, great job, Russ. Behind his kind of conversations, but at the same time, the kind of, oh, I'm just an old man. Like, who cares about my story? I want to know more
Right.
about you.
Right.
Like, this is our moment to learn about each other kind of situation. So I thought it did well, and then the pacing throughout was really good. Where when and where he decided to feed us the kind of little backstories of Theo, to give us little pictures
Yes.
of his past, whether it's about his family or about how he grew up, or even just the how he lived in so many major cities, but he never
Right.
really went into why. And you can make whatever assumption you want from that. So
Especially because like he just has this aura of wealth without being like gaudy. So it definitely made you question what kinds of professions he could possibly have been to have all these experiences. And like he was so well versed in like the musical world and like when he was talking with Simon and like or Simone, whatever.
yeah,
That that whole aspect. Again, I feel like that's just the breadcrumb part of it.
yeah. Yeah, and the idea of wealth, but then also it made me feel like, at least my initial thoughts were, oh, it must be somebody who like spends way too much time behind a desk or something like that, because
Yeah,
how much time he spent looking at beauty, whether
yeah,
it was in the portraits or on the riverbank or just with the music, as you said, like the fact that he like tried to capture those moments when he could, it really gave me the vibe of somebody who had spent too long away from that and wanted to make sure he
sure.
like took every second to
Yeah.
enjoy that. So I think there was so many good things that even when you're wrong, as I was eventually,
Mhm.
you find out. I thought there were so many good breadcrumbs here, as you said, that you were kind of putting it together. And even once you learn the truth, you're like, I could see that actually. Like, okay, I
Yeah,
understand why I thought what I thought, but this
right,
actually makes way more sense.
right. Yeah, no, I think the whole thing was well done, and to have that sort of icing on the cake, as it were, of I'm glad we got that,
Yeah.
that not recognition. Anyway, we learned what we learned.
Yeah.
I can't talk about it yet.
And I think the biggest part too for me was that you could tell there's no like malicious intent from
Mm.
him as he was going
Hmm.
about this. Like even just the way when he writes the first letter,
Hmm.
because he would handwrite these
So
letters to people to bestow the portrait on them, and he talks about how many times he rewrote it because he wanted to
yes,
make sure it was, it sounded right, and how
perceived correctly, and
he didn't want to give off a creepy vibe, and he
yeah.
didn't want to like make them think something untoward. So it's like, I'm just, that the little old man in a green hat that wants
Mhm.
to give you something in public if that's okay with you, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And then same thing, like when we lived that moment through Minette, who's the first one
Yes.
who gets a portrait, and her husband and their conversations, like I can't imagine getting that note and thinking like, I'm gonna go meet this guy. But kind of their dialogue and their back and forth and reading it multiple times and realizing like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem bad and
The
malicious at all.
vibe is okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I really appreciated too how the author chose to give us like the flipped POV of
Mm,
the Minette and her husband, Derek, right?
hmm.
Discussing all of this, because I think that was kind of an important piece of understanding for the reader to have for all of them going forward, but then it was a good choice not to like do that for every single one.
Yeah.
Um, because I think it gets you the point, and it's like this is probably what's going to happen to a lot of scenarios, and they touch on it a little bit with other ones where it's like mentioned that something like that was happening, but we don't get the POV, and I think that was the right move.
Yeah, it didn't get bogged down. I kind of felt the
Yeah,
same thing about the 92 portraits. I was like, are we gonna
yeah,
do
we're gonna
92 of
do
these?
all of it.
That's felt a little wild. Like, how different
Yeah,
can we do it? But I think he chose the right amount of them, and then that's kind of how we get our secondary characters too. Is
yeah.
this creates Theo's little found family and Golden. So, speaking of Golden, that was a fictional town, and it was our setting. So I was wondering what stood out to you about it and how Theo saw it.
I think the thing that stood out to me was how Theo saw it.
Yeah,
So, like, per, I guess, his style, like we were just talking about, he's very conscientious of recognizing the beauty in a situation or a place or a thing or whatever. So I think he saw the good about the town. I mean, it sounded really cute and quaint. I actually kind of pictured my in-laws' town in Georgia. There's like a little town square and like a lot of stuff is walkable and like it's not at a river or on a river, but it was easy to picture the way that it was painted, and I definitely could see how we kind of got the rose-colored glasses version of it because of Theo being our main point of view, and that's kind of his style. So it worked, I think.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it felt real. I've only been to Atlanta and then this other part that's close to Atlanta in Georgia. So I imagine I can imagine what it would be like. The one thing that surprised me was there wasn't a damn street called Peachtree, and there like really definitely would have been if it was Georgia.
Yeah, big miss there.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And I think just kind of focusing on the downtown area, like it was easy to picture this as somewhere around here, just kind of
Yeah.
in the South, like
Hmm.
very obvious main street with their,
Little shops and stuff.
yeah, and how they had refurbished or like whatever, they've like spent money to
To like
reinvigorate,
renovate, yeah,
renovate, sure.
revitalize. I believe
Yeah,
it's called
revitalized.
in the
Thank you.
town.
Downtown, and
Yeah,
kind of how that would make sense for how the Chalice came to be, and Mr. Ponder's whole house, the Ponder house, and all that situation. And then, but you still have like Tony's shop, which is nice, but it's kind of like a little hoarder's paradise too for
right.
Tony and all his books. So I liked that, and then kind of what you were saying, like we focus so much on that. We focus so much on the waterfront and like his trip into the woods with Ellen.
Mm,
But then like when he goes to Kendrick's house, which is kind of more in
yeah,
like the
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 seedy
dingier
side.
part of town or the
Yeah,
poorer part of town, we don't spend as much time talking about. Like he mentions a little bit about it, but for the most part, it's not like the same eloquence that he puts
yeah,
into everything else, as if he is giving us like the tinted glasses look of Golden. So but I found it believable, and I liked how he doesn't shy. Like it's not the perfect place. It has
right.
that bad history that I'm sure plenty of places do. It has kind of its dark marks and its pock marks, and but it also has those good things, and even just adding the story about the fetter, about how the fountain is called the fetter. So
Yeah,
then you don't have to keep saying the fountain every time. Now you can
right.
say the fetter, and like it just makes it more personalized, makes
It
it more believable.
personifies it a little bit.
Yeah. So when you're picturing it or whatever, because I feel like sometimes when you get repetitive with that stuff, if you kept saying the fountain, it's like, I get it, it's a fountain. But by just giving it a name, you're like, oh, okay, cool. I can get this, and it gives you more history again, making it
Yeah,
feel like this place has been around for as long as you're saying it has.
right.
So yeah, I thought it was really great. I wished to be in like the Chalice and the Verbivore and all that. Like it
Yes. And
definitely.
even Ponder House sounded really cool from like a historical architectural standpoint.
Yeah, I think you could definitely understand how Levi has his like fingers in so many pies in real
Yeah.
life, because the way he described like the artwork or the
Yeah.
music or the decorations and all that kind of stuff, he did feel like an older gentleman who has lived a lot of life that can explain all these different things to you. Whereas I'd be like, yeah, it was like a vase or something. I don't really know what they're going for here. There were rugs on the wall. How crazy. So uh, Theo, as it's mentioned there, buys portraits from the chalice and sets up meetings to bestow them upon the people pictured. He and the readers learn many people's stories because of this. I'm wondering which one or ones stood out to you as we get to know these people who eventually become our secondaries.
I mean, like generically, I would say all of the ones that become his like inner circle probably stood out to me, but I do think, and we kind of talked about this a little already, but Manette's being like the first one, I think was important and also like obviously later particularly significant. But I think that her story was one that was really like sad but beautiful. She wants to be a mom really bad, but the pressure to be a career woman is stronger than I guess than her willpower to stand up to her dad, who is wanting that for her. But I don't know, I just think that it was a really nice intro into the bestowals because, like you were saying, Theo's kind of thing is to lift people up and like show them parts of themselves that they don't necessarily see or believe in or whatever. And I think hers was really sweet. They were all really sweet, so it's kind of hard to pick one, but I think with the connection that they actually have, it was kind of the perfect way to start. So that one stood out the most, I think.
Yeah, and I liked how he mentions that it's her eyes that catch him,
Yes.
and that's what makes him believe that she's the first one. Like just him selecting this, where he talks about how when he first walks into the coffee shop, it's just to get a coffee, and then he sees these portraits,
Yeah.
and they're reasonably priced for art
Right.
portraits, but it's all portraits of people from that are from pictures taken inside the coffee shop that the artist then does and then brings the portraits back. And the whole idea behind it was people could buy their portrait and then a new one would go up, but not many people do it because for whatever reason.
Right.
And when Theo first sees them, he then spends like a day just wandering around the different sides of the building looking at them. And then I forget, I think it's this conversation with Shep that gives him the idea of like, oh, I should give these back to people. And what I liked most about it was he took that moment of this meeting with them to tell them what he saw in the image of them. And we see that with Minette, where he's like, I see bravery and I see kindness and I see love, but I also see sadness. And like that was a big thing for Theo, where he talks about sadness, and there's bad sadness and there's good sadness. And he talks about how well the artist was able to capture that, where you can see that there's something there. And for Minette, it is that sadness of having kind of pushed off being a mother and not being sure if she will, have time or ever be able to, because we get to meet her dad, who's a real piece of shit, in a different way than what you would normally think, mentally abusive instead of physically and verbally. Good for him. So I liked that moment where, as you were saying, it kind of gave her a second to step back and be like, really, that's what you see? And then being like, yeah, and you kind of do too. And I don't, I think it happened right after that, or maybe it happens at the end, but she talks about how she put the portrait up where she gets ready every day. And she like
Yeah,
talks to it. She's like, that's right, brave,
it's so
whatever.
affirming.
Yeah. So I thought that was great between, again, like you mentioned, the her getting ready to go, and we see that whole process, and then how she eventually meets up with him and how all of that goes. For me, I really appreciated Ellen
Oh
and his
yeah,
conversation with her, because Ellen is a homeless woman who has some kind of mental um, struggles, and the way Theo interacts with her is so gentle.
it
And I thought
is.
it brought out a different side of both of them, where one, I appreciated that he was wrong, where he like when he wrote her letter, he like made it as simple as possible.
Right.
And Ellen takes the time to call him out on it, be like, you got your grammar wrong on this.
Yeah.
And she proves to be actually very well learned. And, that another one of those situations where whatever your situation is doesn't mean, it doesn't reflect on you. You could be the smartest person who just doesn't have
Right.
a home. You never
Right.
know what people are going through. So I appreciated that. And then, we do see, as he mentioned, something that makes her angry. We see that
Mhm.
kind of interaction happen, and then he's trying to figure out how to get it back to a calmer place. But I liked how it didn't go exactly as he thought,
Yeah.
but we see the friendship that builds off of it from there. And again, makes it feel believable, where like I can see him seeing Ellen and being like, this is exactly who I'm trying to reach.
Right.
Somebody that like everybody else is like, oh, that's just Ellen, and they're like kind to her for the most part.
Overlooked.
Yeah, but very overlooked. And like, well, they take care of her as much as you can, like she has a place to stay
Right.
most nights in the shelter or whatever. They're not doing any more than that, the
Yeah.
basics. And like that friendship with her, and then how she wants to make sure she gives him a gift back. Like it was just really, I really enjoyed their back and forth as the book
Mhm.
continued. So that one stood out to me for sure.
Absolutely. And I feel like that was something that was just so magical about the bestowals and like the relationships that resulted from them. All of them were so genuine, and he really, Theo does such a remarkable job, like meeting people where they're at
Yeah.
in the first meeting, and then all the subsequent meetings really, but also just like providing something for them that they hadn't gotten. And I mean like from a relationship standpoint, not a whatever
Yeah.
physical, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um Material, that's the word I want. Material standpoint, but yeah, hers was really amazing. And yeah, all of them, like it just feel it's such a satisfying relationship that he has with everybody. Like they're both getting something out of it, and they're both the better for those relationships, which I think is just a really sweet reminder that humans don't always suck.
Yeah, supposedly.
We need that in the world,
Yeah.
just those little reminders every now and then.
Well, and I even think that's what Theo gave some of those people. Like that was even mentioned, where it was, everyone was so guarded going into that,
Right,
and then it's just not what they expected. And we see it
right.
with Kendrick too, when he meets Theo and how apprehensive he is of the whole situation, and uh, how above and beyond Theo goes for him and his daughter and everything. And just, it's like
Well, and I think
powerful.
something. It's very powerful. I think something that you said about the way that he behaves with Ellen, like people were, kind of like looking after her as much as is possible, but he gives them something different, which is I think just basic respect. And like the I think that's something that Kendrick also kind of mentions is that he's never been called sir before and like all these things that are is normal to Theo. Like Theo, I don't think would think anything of it or treating people differently necessarily, but um, it's a big deal for those people to have
Yeah.
that kind of interaction.
Yeah. Yeah, every single one was powerful. So,
Yeah,
it's
it's
hard
hard
to
to
choose.
pick. Yeah.
And we'll get into more of them kind of once we can talk about their whole stories and all that in spoilers. But before we have that, we have a get to know your podcaster question. And this one is about gifts. So Theo talks many times about how much more joy comes from giving a gift than receiving it. I'm wondering if there's a gift that you have given, received. Yep, good talk. I'm wondering if there's a gift that you have received or given that is memorable and remains something that you think about today.
Um, I mean, there's been plenty of gifts that I've really appreciated. I mean, actually, the gift you gave me of the Farscape board game means a lot because it's a lot of work and effort that went into that, and it's like very clearly designed for my love. So I like that's one that stands out. But my actual answer was that I mostly appreciate the act of giving. Like I can't think of anything that's like super memorable that I've given, but I really love the feeling of finding something that I know somebody else will enjoy, even if it's like a little something. Some people it's easier for me to do that with than others. But that like little like pleasure of finding a little treasure, not rhyme not intended.
Yeah.
Um, I really like that. And whether or not the person takes as much joy of it as I do is negligible. I don't care. But yeah, I like that. And again, sometimes it's really easy to find things for people,
Yeah.
and other times it's not as easy to pick a gift. I think I am a decent gift giver. I'm kind of like always thinking about that stuff, but yeah, I I think that the whole bestowal thing really spoke to me.
Yeah. Fair. I rolled my eyes a little bit there when you said that because I'm always at a disadvantage when it comes to Amanda because her and Lauren are like so in tune with each other.
Yeah.
They're constantly like, "Oh, I bought one of these for me, and I bought one for you too," and like it's year round. Like we
Yeah.
have just a cabinet that has presents for Lauren in it, and Amanda's like, "I can't give it to her right now. I just gave her one," so it just like collects stuff, and then they like oh, I bought one of these for me, and I bought one for you. It's like I bought one for me and one for you, and it's just I can't compete with that. Their
They're
their
very
interests are
endearing.
so aligned that I
Mhm.
try to dip my toe in, and they're like, "Not you." I'm like, "Okay, that's fair."
This
Uh,
is for you.
yeah, I wasn't doing this to fish for compliments, but I appreciate that about the Farscape board game. That one got me into a little bit of trouble because for your 40th and for Lee's 40th, I made you guys board games,
Now
and I
you're just
didn't
the guy
do.
who makes
I
board
did.
games.
Was that?
Now you're the guy who makes board games.
Yeah, but that, and I also didn't make my wife a board game. Not that she would be interested in
He's
that.
not. That's not her
But
jam.
she was like, "You didn't really do anything for my 40th." And I was like, "You didn't really want anything." So last year, she always jokes, ever since we've been together, that she deserves a month of birthdays, birthday month instead of a birthday. So last year, I gave her birthday month, where every day I made or wrote or created
That's
something
so
for her,
sweet.
which was a nightmare. I will never do it
Oh,
again.
it'll work. Yeah.
But that was like there were times where I really enjoyed that. There were times that it really stressed me out. Where it was like, ah, fuck, I'm like counting gifts like 4 times in a row. Like, oh, I haven't made anything. I need to make something. It's been a while. But yeah. So for me, aside from that, the one that immediately popped up to my mind was my COVID gift from you guys, from everybody. Where during COVID, Amanda and I used to go to the movie theaters a lot back before the pandemic times, and so for I think it was I don't
It
know
was your
my 30
33rd birthday.
yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um she rented out because the little theater around here was doing like, oh, rent the whole thing and like watch whatever you want. So it's like, oh, okay, we'll probably just watch Hamilton because that had recently come out.
Yep.
And instead, well, we did watch Hamilton, but before we watched that, we watched this like 20 to 25 minute video, compilation video of all of my friends doing different things, wishing me a happy birthday, skits or songs or whatever. So that was one of the coolest things I've ever been given for sure. Because it just, again, it's like you said, when you see something that somebody's put a lot of thought and effort into and it's specifically tailored for you,
Yeah.
like it's one thing to be like, hey, I bought this for you and I thought of you. And like
Right.
that's cool too, where you're like, hey, this is actually like,
Created this.
yeah, but to be like, hey, yeah, I like had to write
Yeah.
and edit and want to direct and film and put music to this.
Yeah.
It means a lot. So, and then to toot my own horn for me, probably the one of the greatest gifts I think I've ever given was because of what happened when I was younger. I lost both my parents, and because of that, I grew up never calling anybody mom and dad. And I was very like I would sign guardian on the permission slips just to. I was not a great kid at times. But the
Oh.
point of this terribleness is to tell you that when the Christmas of after I turned 18, I wrote this poem to the woman that I now call my mother and my dad, who's my aunt and uncle, and I like wrote this poem and I had it engraved on this piece of wood with some pictures, one of me as a kid and one of me, my senior picture, basically being like, I'm gonna now call you mom and dad, like that kind of
That's so
situation.
cute.
It was super cute and like I'm sure it's a terrible poem. My mom still has it, obviously,
I mean,
but I
you're
haven't read
18,
it in a long
so
time because they live a country away from me. So I'm like worried when they come back here that I'll be like looking at it and be like, this is terrible poetry.
you were eight, get a pass. You were 18.
I know, trust me. But like this is again now having older nephews when they talk to me and I'm like, fuck, dude, I was just like you. That makes me think that this beautiful gift is just it is still beautiful, but it's just hot garbage of like, you thought this was prose? What are you doing? So
Amazing.
yeah. So those are ours. Let us know about yours with whatever gifts you've given or received in the comments that everyone likes to use so frequently. Please stop. It's so hard to respond to them all. And on that note, we move into spoilers. Before we do that, we have your song. It goes like this. This is the pot that we're going into spoilers. If you don't know the book, get out, because this is the pot that we're going into spoilers. It's time to learn what Theo is all about. Like, what's his real name and what does he do for his job? Why does he have so much money? This is all the things we're going to learn in spoilers. Also, why is he in Golden? So, before Christmas, Theo must return to New York to handle some business. He leaves gifts to be delivered to his friends and spends a quiet holiday away before returning in the third week of January. When he returns, he makes plans to begin the bestowal of portraits again once the weather warms up. He focuses on his friendships and continues to have deep and meaningful conversations with them. In the spring, he celebrates 1 year in Golden. His friends join him to celebrate one of their own as the young cellist Simone has his master's performance to finish his degree. After an incredible evening of music, Simone gives in to an encore where he brings up Basil and Kendrick to perform an original work titled Fado for Theo, as an ode to the generous man who has become a large part of their lives in the last year. After the song, Theo comes onto the stage and gifts Simone with two things. First, he had Simone's parents flown in for the show, and second, he had Asher, the artist, create a portrait of Simone and his cello. The night is one of the best of Theo's life, and after a little celebration, the group splits up to head home. Around 2 p.m. that night, Theo is awoken to shouting and looks out his balcony to see Ellen being attacked by a group of drunk college kids. Simone intervenes and is able to get Ellen free, but is then beaten himself. Theo cries out for help and faints, which causes him to go over the balcony railing and fall to his death. The perfect day is ruined by an unbelievable night. In the aftermath of his death, his friends in Golden learned that Theo was a renowned artist who went by a single name, Zilla. Theo was a shortening of his middle name. Zilla, the artist, not the dog, was a powerhouse, and his work is in many prominent museums around the world. He also was known to be a recluse, and while he was incredibly generous, he was not seen in public for a couple of decades. The mystery of what brought Theo to Golden led to the small town being overrun by reporters and journalists. Although his body was sent back to Spain to be buried with his daughter, the town held a funeral for him 2 weeks after his death. The overflowing church spoke of the good that Theo had brought into their town, and many mourners brought the portraits that Theo had bestowed upon them. After the funeral, Mr. Ponder was left to handle Theo's final wishes, which included giving a package to the artist Asher. Asher found 3 letters. The first was a long letter from Theo explaining how the love of his life was Asher's mother, but he had let her get away because he was so distracted by his rising star and celebrity. He learned later on that she had a son who was Theo's, but she asked him to keep his distance from her and the boy because they had made a good life in Golden and she didn't want to upset that. Theo respected her wishes until she passed, and then, knowing his own time was getting short, decided to come to Golden to meet the son he never knew. He cherished his time getting to know Asher as both the man and the artist he had become. The second letter was from Asher's mother. When he was 6, she had him write to famous artists in hopes of inspiration for her son. In her letter to Zillah, she told him about his son and how she had to flee abruptly and elope with her high school boyfriend who accepted her and the unborn child as his own. The last letter was the one from a 6-year-old Asher to Zillah. Theo also left behind a portrait he had done of Asher, and behind it a picture that Asher's mother had painted of Theo. Asher learns that his mother's favorite painting was one Theo had done of her decades before. The story ends with an epilogue updating the lives that Theo touched and making sure the reader knows they all ended up in a good place. Also, if you don't know, our friend has a dog named Zilla. That is why that was started there. All you people that just watch us and don't know
Non-weird
our
family
personal life.
people.
Yeah. So now that we know the whole story, I was wondering what you thought about Theo when it comes to his daughter, his childhood, his whole identity as the artist, Zilla, everything.
I mean, it was nice to finally have the answer to all the breadcrumbs, I guess.
It was nice to get the carrot.
The carrot, yeah, it
Yeah.
was nice to get the carrot. The loss of his daughter was obviously like really transformative for him in terms of like his reclusivity. I don't think
Nice.
that's the word.
I'll allow it.
Cool. And I think that the like finding out who he was, um, like profession wise, and his connection to Golden was like I wasn't expecting it, but then like all of the pieces fit so well. I mean, obviously they fit so well, but it was like, why didn't I see that before? You know, that kind of thing. So it was pretty satisfying to have that. You know, as you were reading about the letters that he left for Asher, I was like, wow, that was really good forethought. I mean, he is a very planning person, so it doesn't really surprise me that he'd had that all kind of like lined up. Um, I knew as soon as we started reading a book about an old guy that he was gonna die.
Yes.
Like fully knew that, but this was obviously really sad that he died in such like a unexpected way.
Yeah.
But then just really satisfying that bows in the best way.
Nice. Fair. Yeah, for me, we talked about this outside of the podcast where I was like,
Yeah.
there's a moment where he goes out for an early morning walk because he has trouble sleeping and he runs into Kendrick down by the waterfront and he's like out of breath and all this. And I'm like, oh, does he have
Yeah.
like a heart issue?
Yep.
Or like cancer or something like that? Like
Yep.
it definitely felt like somebody who was trying to do as much good as they could with the time they had
Bucket
left,
list stuff.
knowing that there was an end date.
Yep.
So yeah, to literally have him just die, and like we learn it from Simone's point of view, where Simone, after getting this beating, protecting Ellen, he like runs to this couple to try to get them to call for help because he's lost his phone, and the woman is shrieking, and he finds out the woman's shrieking because there's Theo who has
Right.
fallen to his death. Like I had to reread that because I was like, that's
Yeah.
how it happens.
So there was when he had gone out, he like had woken up because he couldn't sleep, and I was like, uh-oh, he's gonna like have a heart attack or something like that. And then he goes out to the balcony and he's like watching this or trying to see what's going on with Ellen and Simone. And there was a comment about how he like leaned too far over, and I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
And then like later when it was like Simone's point of view, I was like, oh no.
It was devastating. And it also worked with the callback to the 18-inch banister or whatever,
Yes.
that they had placed that inside of our heads beforehand. So I appreciated all of that. hard cut back in for you YouTubers. For everyone else, they'll never know what happened. I love saying that.
Editing skills are solid.
And on that note, and kind of along those same lines as the railing, like the from the get-go, we were told that Theo spent 1 year in Golden. His
Yes.
1 year in Golden, blah, and all this stuff.
They're
So again,
counting
like
down time.
yeah, I was like, okay, he's either gonna get sick or something's gonna
Yeah.
happen. Or like when he went back to New York for that month or
Yeah.
whatever it ended up being, I was like, obviously there's still stuff he has to do there. So like even before we knew who he was, it was like, okay, he's but he's got to die, right? Because it feels like he has such a connection or he's building such a connection there. Like, why would he leave? So yeah, it was just really that was so upsetting. And honestly, a lot of his life in retrospect was kind of upsetting. Like the
Yeah.
whole situation with his daughter that he talks about and how he lost her. I think she was 10, I want to say, or something
Yeah.
like that. And his wife, who was basically like a socialite, turns out she was a princess or some shit, wasn't she? Some kind of
Something.
some kind of royalty.
He didn't
Uh,
sound great though.
who like didn't love their lifestyle of being super rich and that she literally had to do nothing. So instead she decided to be also like a drunk who put their children in danger. And then she flipped her car and I think they both died, right?
They did, yeah.
Yeah. It was really focusing on the daughter, but that kind of revelation came earlier. Like this is again where like the pacing worked really well where like even as he's being secretive he talks about his daughter Tita and how then her memories keep coming up at different times and like the idea of his like year of wandering where he's so lost without her and how at this point he's still like a younger man like really in the height of his artist fame and he's not putting out anything new and people are like what's going on and his agent called it his year of walking and he talks about how he just wandered like around his giant estate and then into the woods and all that and like he has his breakthrough moment when he's sitting by a riverbank and he kind of catches the golden hour where it's 15 minutes or so before the sun goes down and then the first star comes out and like in that moment he said and there's no way this number is true it's like 10,000 sparrows or starlings or whatever birds there were are creating like this beautiful image
Murmuration.
murmuration thank you in the sky and he's like that's kind of like that's where I'll go to have my moments with Tita now moving forward. He makes that a point, no matter where he is, to have those moments. So like that kind of stuff becomes more heartbreaking as you realize he talks about it the whole time why it's so important for him to be near water.
Yeah.
And then you learn why, and it's like Jesus. It just felt like as we learned the truth behind him and his past, it was like more just hitting you on the head over and over again with the life he has led. And like again, you think he would have it great because he's this world-renowned artist, and instead he was really struggling for a lot of it.
Yeah,
Um,
it happens to everyone, even if they're well off.
right? More money does not mean happiness.
Less
Uh,
problem.
but and it also makes it just feel more real, where kind of he draws into himself. I also wonder, and it wasn't really addressed, but by the time Tita dies, he knows about Asher
Mm,
because Asher would have been born first.
right.
He was 6 years old when he wrote these letters.
Yeah.
Tita dies when she's, I think, 10. So the way numbers work, that's just how it works. Um, so I wonder like how he really fought that urge, like especially after
But
losing a
not
child,
to,
to know there's another one out there, and not being able to go to them. So
yeah.
um, but then I think that makes his connection with Asher all the more powerful. And I like
Yes.
how he got to know him as like a man
Yeah.
first, and like gave Asher that opportunity where it's like no there's no strings attached as far as Asher knows, where it's just like, hey, I'm an interested person. And like the portrait thing worked out. Like I think he even said like his plan is starting to click into place,
Yeah.
or something like that. Something kind of
I just thought he
trivial.
meant the bestowals. Like I didn't think.
Yeah, that he wanted some connection with Asher. I was like, maybe he like needs him to like paint something for him. I don't know. What's he talking about? So I liked how again there was no maliciousness there, where it was just like, no, like this is the perfect way to get to meet him unassumingly and then maybe build a relationship without having to be like, hey, I'm your dad.
Yeah, well, and I liked how the author presented their interactions in such a way that like it obviously wasn't obvious that Theo is Asher's dad, but he's so taken by his skill as an artist and appreciates him as a human and like all these things that are just like a normal person to person interaction, let alone a father to son. And I think that's a really cool way to have experienced your kid for the first
Yeah.
time, is like seeing them. I mean, obviously you saw him as a son too, but I think, I don't know, I really respect the author for having portrayed it in that way, so that we had no clue
Yeah.
during all of those interactions. Like, yeah, you're like, wow, he really likes this guy, but like there's reason to really like the guy.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
And I think for both ways, and again, as you were pointing out first, how it makes sense in hindsight why Minette would be the first one. So
Mm-hmm.
Minette is Asher's niece.
Thanks.
So also Theo's grand niece, or however that works. And I think that he saw some of Asher's mother in her, is part of the idea with that portrait. Another reason why it grabbed him. But it just works where like Asher can talk to him and just when they first meet and talk to him as somebody who appreciates art. And
Yeah.
then he can understand, as Theo shows how well read he is in art. They're like, I don't know, it was just so good because Asher is respecting him as a man again, without
Yes.
having to be like, oh, this guy's my dad, or I owe him something because he bought all these portraits. Like, because he has that conversation with Minette first, where Minette's like, this old man bought my portrait, and like,
Yeah.
this is what happened, and it was like really touching and a beautiful moment. Like, he doesn't see it as, oh, you just bought those portraits to give me money to like support me, whatever. Like, it was all very genuine how it flowed together, and I thought like it couldn't have been done better how it all worked out.
Absolutely. And how like the way that he treated Asher was not dissimilar to the way he treated all the people that he was interacting with in Golden, especially the bestowal people. So obviously he's gonna have, I don't know, I don't want to say more respect, but he's gonna be respecting Asher as the artist of these portraits that he's like interacting with. But then like you as the reader aren't getting anything different, I feel like, from their interactions than you do with Theo's interactions with everyone else. Like he's always so genuine and he's always so nice.
Yeah.
Um, that there wasn't really like a clue. Or, like big enough clues to, I think, put it together.
Yeah. And then from Theo's standpoint, where he can like go to Asher's studio, and then when he's invited to Asher's home for Thanksgiving, and he sees like the painting set up, and he sees the letters and all that, and like he knows about that already, but he doesn't play it off that way. And again, it's just like another way Asher is showing respect for that person that Theo is without even knowing that that's who Theo is.
Right.
And I think at that Thanksgiving, because Minette's father Pierce comes, and him
Is
and
it
Asher are brothers. Turns out they're not full brothers, as we learned. But somebody even says like it's hard to believe that they come from the same parents or something like that. So I thought there was a lot of really good, like for foreboding, yep, foreshadowing moments where I think if there were things that you read afterwards, if you read this book again, I think there's a lot of moments that kind of hint at it, but can also be seen as a totally normal reaction or thing to say. And then also just the fact that they had already made enough of a connection with Theo over that Thanksgiving to invite them to his home. And like for Theo, that must have been such a big moment, and he can't like let them know how important it is. But like again, they have that time with him just because they think he's a friendly old man that, needs a place to go. So why not open our house to him and a couple of the other people?
Well, I think too, like after we get the knowledge that Asher is his kid, but um Pierce isn't, it's like, oh, of course, they're so different. Like you said, somebody even brings it up, but like to be able to, that happens all the time. Like people who are fully blood related, living, growing up in the same place are vastly different. But this is like, I guess, validation that uh, Theo's energy got
Yeah.
to Asher, even though he wasn't around for his upbringing.
And just the way you see what's important to them, where
Yeah,
Pierce is all about money and
yeah.
Asher's all about family, and experience. And like, yeah, Minette even says like she feels more comfortable around her aunt and
Mhm.
uncle than her dad at this point, and her dad's the one giving her all that pressure about, oh, all the money we spent on your education, and you work so hard, you're going to throw that away for kids. And
It also makes so much more sense knowing now what we know about Theo when he first meets Minette and the family, how much he's like, tell me about your grandma. Like he it redirects the conversation,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
honestly for sort of selfish reasons too, which like don't it doesn't seem selfish in the moment, but you're like, of course he wants to know about the love of his life.
Yeah, and it did work out that Minette even mentions that Gammy was the one who basically
Yeah.
raised her and all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. I didn't think about that, but in hindsight, that is another very clear thing. So yeah, just it all worked out so well. And again, as I was saying earlier, like you may have your ideas, but this payoff was so good because it worked. The breadcrumbs were there, and it also didn't make you feel stupid for what you were thinking. You're like, oh my God, I just didn't think it was going to be this.
This, yeah. What was your theory?
I just thought he was like a rich guy
Yeah.
who I didn't know his connection to Golden. Like even after he dies and we learn he's the artist and all that, I was like, I still don't get the connection to Golden. And then when Asher was singled out, I was like, huh, I still don't get the connection to Golden. But like the
I
whole
thought
idea of like Ponder, Mr. Ponder knew because
who
he
he
was his
was.
confidant, so he knew more. And like the fact that he set up the apartment and all that, like it really made sense that there was some kind of big reveal happening
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, I
Uh,
definitely thought he was some just like powerful person. Um, and I did get the impression that he was like setting up stuff for the people that he was like meeting, not necessarily Asher in particular, but like I don't know, creating like a trust or like something like that that would like take care of the people that had become his family, which I guess he ends up doing too. But yeah, I wasn't prepared for the reality.
yeah, yeah, me neither. And um, yeah, I was like, oh, it's just because he respected him as an artist.
Yeah, exactly.
And like even the fact that like he mentions numerous times throughout that like he had the love of his life once, and he's like,
Yeah,
and I let her get away, and it wasn't like the love of my life and Tita, like she was the other one, but like that woman, I let her get away because of just how stuck up his own ass he was, and how he let fame kind of ruin him that way. So it is
right.
nice to see that correction as an older man, where he would wanna, and like I love that he like respected her wishes.
Yeah,
But like now it's like okay, now she's gone. I think the dad was gone too.
I think like a
So
while ago.
there's
Yeah,
nobody that's really going to be hurt by this.
right.
And it gives him a chance to get to know his kids. So, um, yeah, very powerful stuff. So,
Very.
moving on to all those secondaries, we have quite a few
I
of them. So we can discuss anybody you want to. We have touched on Asher a little bit, but we have Asher, Tony, Simone, Kendrick and his daughter Lamisha, and Ellen, as well as others if there's other people you want to get into.
I guess we have already talked about Asher quite a bit. I think Tony was, yeah, I think that the bit about his like war PTSD was maybe a little bit out of place. But overall, I sort of appreciated his like the atheism that he brought to the story,
Yeah.
and his like just jovial nature. And I mean, this is across the board, but I think with Tony and with Mr. Ponder, but obviously Mr. Ponder was a little different because he like actually knew who Theo was. But with Tony, he like wanted to crack the code, wanted to like figure out the thing.
Yeah.
Didn't really wasn't able to get answers from him, but I appreciated that he kept trying, and that they formed this bond because they were like a little closer in age than most of the other crowd that Theo surrounded himself with. But they were very different people, and I love that. I mean, I guess Theo is different than most of these guys or most of these people, but um, yeah, Tony was a a fun little um, black sheep, I guess.
Yeah, I liked a lot about him. And like you bring up the idea of how he was an atheist and Theo was so very religious and very
Mhm.
much believed in heaven. And I think it just speaks to their experiences. Where for Theo, I can understand somebody who loses a child is thinking there's got to be something after this so I
Right.
could see my child again.
Right.
And for Tony, who's lived through Vietnam and is thinking, I've seen hell on earth, there's no God that would let us
Yeah.
go through that. Again, just really making our characters believable and still like the fact that it was playful, the fact that they didn't have to like get really deep down into it. As you mentioned, that was kind of the thing I said before we started. Like his they sit down to enjoy a drink and some conversation, and like out of nowhere, Tony's kind of falls into this Vietnam PTSD, talking about an incident where he accidentally killed an innocent and how much it affected him. And again, not having any experience with that, this could be how it happens. But it just felt like the story was so full of emotions and so full of like these different vignettes and all that, where it was like we learned about everybody's different struggles, and it felt like we were doing so well, even with it being like, I just met you for 30 minutes, but here's my deepest, darkest secret. It just felt like it wasn't handled as delicately with Tony. And
Mhm.
again, maybe that's how it works, and I just am not aware of that. But
I
it
imagine
felt left
the
field-ish.
realism, yeah, the realism of like actual PTSD not being delicate does kind of track, I
Yeah,
suppose. Yeah, I agree that it did sort of like feel especially intense compared to like the rest of the things that
yeah.
we experience with the other people.
But the moment I loved with Tony was his birthday, where Theo sets up a private dinner for them in his apartment, and Tony's the only other one who gets to go into his apartment while he's there. And he gets the dinner from like the finest restaurant in town. They cater it to his house so they can sit and talk and all that. But like the conversation about the port wine, which is made from the area that Theo grew up in, and how he talks about it was 1947. Because of course Theo's got so much money, you know, but it's a 1947 vintage port, which is a big deal. And Theo talks because that's the year that Tony was
Tony
born,
was
and he talks about how at that point he was like a young teens or somewhere in there, and he's like, I could have picked these grapes. I could have stomped these grapes in the barrel. I could have been there when this was bottled. Like there's so much of me inside of this bottle, and it like represents you
really
too. And like
precious.
we're gonna just have this nice moment together. I thought that was like such a cool moment to be able to share with somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah, that bit made me cry. As many bits did. Um, yeah, I think that the bit about that dinner that he organized and how the server woman was actually one of his like missed connections.
Yeah.
And I just think that was a really sweet little additional. It wasn't really a bestowal, but it was like still a touch point. And very, yeah, very poignant as well.
Yeah. And how he didn't recognize her because she had gone by her middle name now because she had
Yes,
gotten
which
out of a
like
bad relationship.
scary.
Yeah.
And also wild that she's still in like the same town, but
I know. You might want to move. Oh, no, it's fine. He's got a new girlfriend. It's like, you might want to move
right.
farther away.
Should also probably warn her.
Yeah. And then just the last thing I had with Tony was at after, no, for Christmas or after he passes, one or the other, he gives him another bottle of port, and it's from 1968, which was the year Tony came home from Vietnam. And also was part of their like you're talking about how you like think of these gifts all the time. Like Theo definitely had that where
Oh yeah.
he asked him about his the best cup of coffee he ever had, and he said it was
Yes.
when he got out of the jungle and knew he was going home. And he's like, best cup of coffee, best whatever, best
Anything.
meal,
Yeah.
best shower, best bed, everything. So that's his gift to him is another bottle of port from that year. Just a lot of really nice bows and tie-ups and stuff like that. And yeah, as you said, Tony being more of his
Like a
uh
juxtaposition to Theo.
yeah,
Yeah.
and still and that like constant, oh, buy a book so I can stay open another week. When in reality, he bought that building when he came back from the war, like before the whole revitalization happened. And like he's fine. He's not rich like Theo, but he
No, but
doesn't
he's
need you to
doing
buy that book to survive. He basically is a library for Ellen. After she gets thrown out of the real library, he lets her take whatever books, and she returns most of them. And like, just the guys
he's
sitting
the
around there, the
penny
penny
loafers.
loafers, just sitting
So
around there
cute.
out front talking. Like we have that in my gas station down the road from me. There's guys that meet there every morning to
They just hang out.
they buy coffee, and there's like a little sitting area, and they sit and they talk. Like,
Oh
every
my,
day I go in there, they're in there.
that's really cute. I also really appreciate the name of his bookstore. The Verbivore is
Yeah,
hilarious.
yeah,
Yeah, I all the characters were really well fleshed out. Yeah. Were we done with Tony?
Sure.
Okay. Um, I think Simone was really cool, like how talented he is and like connection that they had over music and like knowledge of instruments and that kind of thing was really sweet. I was devastated when his hand got broken and I was like, they better tie this up with a really nice bow of him because if he can't play, man.
Yeah.
Also, like when I was reading, there's a really good Spotify playlist of Theo of Golden stuff. And when the recital was happening, I was like, I'm gonna play that cello suite like on repeat.
Nice. Yeah, I appreciated again how he was there for a long time before Theo really makes the connection with him, where they like similar to Tony just have like these passing little jabs and
Interaction.
conversations,
Yeah.
interactions, yeah, and then eventually they get to know each other better through that. And like I forget the cellist that he mentions,
Yeah.
but Simone mentions like, oh, this is kind of like I heard that and like really wanted to get into music and. Of course, Theo's like,
He was
oh,
like,
I saw him, you know,
personal
in
friend.
Paris, whatever. And then, yeah, after his death, we find out it's his personal friend, whatever. But the idea of Simone being left money by, I think, his grandmother or somebody to buy a cello, and he finds like one that has a history to it. And it's not perfect, but it's perfectly his. And Theo talks about the songs that are just waiting to come out of that. Like their relationship was so incredible, and like the fact that it's definitely a level of cheese, right? Like he performs this like beautiful recital by himself. He does do some duos with the pianist at some point. But as Tasha is doing arms on YouTube, the encore performance when they're like, "Oh, you're not even supposed to do encores, but we're gonna bring
This
out
was the original
Basil."
song
Yeah, who's like Basil, who is our busker, and Kendrick, who is the overnight custodian, who Theo's
with
also been helping
pipes.
his family with great pipes, as we learn. Yeah, we have a song called "The Fado to Theo," and the fact that it's a fado is not anything I'm familiar with, but it's like a traditional Portuguese
Portuguese.
style of that song, and it's supposed to be sadder, but they're like, we did it in this tune, but we did it happier, and then of course it becomes Theo's funeral song. It's like a full circle, yeah, tears everywhere moment. Just again, when you're reading this, and I can understand people that are like, oh, we're kind of like jumping from person to person, like I don't get it. When you tie all that back together in the end, it's so much more rewarding. Like when you stay with it and you see the growth that this one person has given to all these different people and then bring them back together. So,
He's like the sun and everybody's like orbiting around him. Like that recital, how um basically like Theo's gang was
yeah.
like in that row and like that's just such a an outpouring of support for Simone who's like far away from home. Oh my God, when his parents came out, I was like, no.
Get out of here. Get out of here. His parents too.
It was just so sweet. Like the bows were the most bows that I've ever bowed, but in like the best way possible. I was not sad about any of it.
Totally
I mean, it
fair.
was sad, but it wasn't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I appreciated the portrait too. And again, like this is a moment where Theo could have like tipped his hand to who he was. Like he could have done
Yeah.
the portrait as he is a portraitist as
But
well,
he,
but
but
having
like,
Asher do
so
it,
good.
which
Dude,
also makes so much more sense, obviously, for the situation. And like it makes Asher's portrait
yeah,
mean that much more
yeah.
at the end. But yeah, no, I liked all of that. And then it's just that shitty situation where it's like Theo is walking home that night. It's like, I think this is the happiest night of my life. And then he dies. Thanks
Of
for that.
course. You can't get too happy. That's like the
Don't
trope.
don't
Don't
get
get
too
too
happy.
happy. Shit, the other shoe is gonna drop. Um, then Kendrick and Lamisha, like Kendrick's amazing. Like I would have loved to have seen some bows of like his vocal situation, like
Yeah.
play into it more, but just like the level of comfort he was able to reach with himself and like his interactions with other people. I think he like really kind of came out of his shell post Theo or post knowing Theo. Um, and then of course like Lamisha and Theo's relationship was just so sweet. And like the obviously his gifting of all of her like medical care and all that stuff makes you know that he is loaded and we already
Yeah.
knew he was loaded but
Wait, you can pay for healthcare in America for somebody else? Yeah,
in
you
this
got
economy.
money.
Yeah. But just like the little things he does, like he spends all this time with her. And it's not just like sending the money and
Yeah,
like again material things. It's like the value of the time that he's spending and the lessons that he's teaching her. And I think obviously he can probably see a little bit of his own daughter in that
yeah.
situation. Somebody who was in a car wreck and survived, but had all this physical challenges afterward. And like, oh, this how she's like a little artist, like making her little comic books and stuff, and
Yeah.
just oh my God, when he was explaining about the cello music, um, like bouncing around the room and like everything he touched was magical.
Yeah. I was very much like Landon from Betty, where he's going to tell you
Yeah.
a fantastical story, and when you're referencing like the notes are trapped in the cello, and as Simone plays them, they'll come out and they're going to hide all over the room, and then afterwards, when everyone leaves, they're going to come out and party and celebrate that they're celebrating their freedom
So cute. And then there was later on when she was
during his
at the
funeral.
funeral, yeah,
Yeah,
when she's like, is this gonna
are
is
the
the same
words
thing?
going to come out or something? I forget what she was saying.
Yeah, I also
Which
forget.
word
I
was
think
there,
maybe
but
it was the thing that the priest was saying. I don't
yeah,
remember. Because I don't think it was music, but um, yeah, I can't really get over the amount of um when you brought it up about Betty and Landon, he was very good at finding that spark in somebody else and lighting it. And Theo is exactly the same way. Like, here's this thing that you might not have realized or recognized about yourself. I'm gonna
yeah.
like stoke that a little bit, and then it's gonna be something that you can grow.
And that's why it made sense that he was an artist. Like the fact that he could
Totally.
see that beauty in those
Yeah.
things and like just had to make sure the other people saw it too.
Yes.
As far as his relationship with Lamisha, like don't forget he even like writes the story for her about the girl with the blue
The
shoes
blue shoe
because she had missed like a year of school and was worried about going back with a limp and maybe being on crutches and all that because her leg was so
being different from her peers.
beat up from the accident. So yeah, that and how with Mr. Ponder's help they set up like a fund for where the grandmother worked so she could no longer have to work but still get paid and they like made it sound like it was some kind of like company thing they
Yes.
managed to do like and that's how Theo worked like he didn't want people to know he was doing it and
Very behind the scenes.
and we see that with Mr. Ponder's secretary. I forget her name. But how she was so skeptical of him. But then even like, and at first she was like, why don't you just like buy all the paintings at once and just hand them out? But then
And then she's like, this is actually fun.
as it went on, yeah. And then I think afterwards Theo surprised her with a portrait of herself or something, and she
Something
like
like that, yeah.
got to, or she gave it to somebody. I forget. She got to like feel a bit of that moment,
I
too,
think
and
when
kind
she
of
was
like
going around and giving the gifts to people.
yeah, yeah, right. She got to understand a bit of what he was going through. As far as Kendrick, like as you mentioned when we were talking about Ellen earlier, just having somebody to respect him, call him sir, to look at him as more than just a janitor. And
Totally.
like
Yeah.
Simone sees that too as he's
Yes.
playing that's
Yes.
old jazz tune that he's just kind of breaking up this difficult piece he's doing, and then he hears somebody singing it, and instead of
And they
Kendrick,
connect over that.
yeah, and Kendrick's like, "Oh, don't, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to interrupt you. Like, it's against company policy or whatever. I
Yeah,
get you fired." And Simone's like, "No, dude. Like, which one do you like best?" And like,
yeah.
feel like that's like Theo rubbing off on them, where it's like, "Hey, it's okay to like step out of your comfort zone and like
Yeah.
talk to somebody that maybe you wouldn't normally."
Yes.
Um, and then Kendrick's whole kind of hit the side quest we go on with him, where the man who hit his wife and
Oh,
daughter, Lamisha. Uh, we find out it's an illegal immigrant who was taken and deported, and he was trying to get back to his family because his daughter is 7 or 8 years old and she is going through cancer treatments, I think, or
something
something.
like that. Yeah.
So he's trying to get back to his family, and it took him like 3 or 4 months to get back, and he was so close to home, and it was late at night, and he wasn't doing anything negligent aside from I think he fell asleep or something
Being
like that.
tired. Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't like a drunk driving thing or anything
Right.
like that. And he hit them, and then he's been in jail now for like 10 months while they're trying to figure this out. And he talks to Derek, the
Oh,
DA, who is also Manette's husband. And like that whole moment, yeah, full circle, all the circles. That whole moment though, where he talks about seeing this man in court because him and Lamisha were asked to go by the judge because they want
Like
their
impact statements.
yeah. And they see him and he realizes that this man is not a monster that he thought he was. He's just like a scared little man who is like
He sees
trying to get
himself.
back to his daughter. Yeah, exactly. And like he doesn't speak English and he's like, you know, thinks he whatever Kendrick thinks he's like praying for him or like apologizing or something he like doesn't understand, but he does. And so that happens, right? And then Derek wants to know what they would push for, like how heavily they want to go after him, all this stuff. And Kendrick has that conversation with him about looking at somebody and how Theo taught him to like actually look at people rather than not. And like that whole him being in jail came out of nowhere. But like Kendrick just went through this 18
Yeah.
months ago with Derek
Yes, that's what I was gonna say.
where he did whatever something that he didn't even do. He kept saying that like
Yeah.
I wasn't even guilty, but
Yeah.
you didn't even look at me. I was just
Yeah.
another number. And the
Yeah.
guy that the town or whatever the court hired didn't look at me either and was basically like, "Hey, take the deal. You can get out in a year." He's like, "Nobody thought about me. Nobody looked at me." And I did a year of time away from my daughter for something I didn't even do. And he's like, "You need to look at these people," and like all that.
I
Uh,
think that's such a ripple effect of like Theo taking the time to show Kendrick that he's worth something.
yeah.
And then like all of that and just like the recognition of, oh my God, it's so good. I don't want to cry, but like, yeah, that I forgot about that side quest. That was a good one.
Well, and even the bestowal on Kendrick, where because Theo
Mhm.
knows he's the overnight custodian, like he did a good job talking to Shep and Mr. Ponder and these other people to like learn about these
About their
people that he was meeting
situations.
with
Yeah.
as best he
As
could.
much as they could. Yeah.
Yeah, so he knew about that. So he's like, okay, well, I'll meet you after you get out of work and all this. And he even mentions how he saw Kendrick like spying on him from the campus
The
building or
window.
whatever. He's like, I'd probably do that, and whatever. Adds levity to it, but like they end up leaving on such an equal term that Kendrick never saw himself on. And then the portrait becomes like one of Lamisha's favorite things that she owns is the portrait of her father. And how like again, similar to Ellen, how he had like never really seen it. Like some guy just took my picture one day and I never really thought anything about it because I wasn't going to spend $125 on a picture anyway. So what does it matter? Yeah, it's there again. There's just so much in this story of all these individual lives that every single one of them, yes, it's a little fantastical that they're all in the same location, but it is a reminder that everybody has a story. You never know what other people are going through or what can change their lives. So, the relationship with Lamisha was so strong, and like you said, it was kind of like a second chance for him to be
Yeah.
with Tita,
Yeah.
to read stories to her,
To
to
like raise somebody.
Oh, and even like that night that Simone overhears Kendrick singing, and he's on his break or something like that. And he looks at his phone because Theo
And
had
it's
set
his
up
daughter.
cameras there so he could watch Lamisha when she was in the hospital, and
Yeah.
Theo's there, and Simone's like, "Why is he there?" He's like, "Well, sometimes you can't sleep, so he like goes there to just be with her, and like in case she wakes up." And it's like, Jesus Christ, this man.
And like also that's like not that's a haul. He has to like get on a bus and like go like that's a lot of effort for
Yeah,
an old guy.
yeah,
Um, are we good with them?
yeah, yeah,
And then the last one obviously is Ellen.
yeah,
Um, I mean, I think you're right about that being one of the standout ones. I think that she's such an interesting, like, enigma, very much a don't judge a book by its cover, as we realize that she's actually very well read and, like, really creative. And I loved when she sort of designed this, like, bird watching day
yeah.
for her and Theo, and they rented that bike, and, like, just the way that the bike guy, Jason,
Jason, yeah,
interacted with her, and like it just shows that she might be separate or it might be different from the people in the community, but there are people in the community that like care about her and are trying to like keep her safe and well. And it was just so cute how they like how she was protective of Theo getting on a bike again, and
yeah,
like yeah, there were just a lot of really cute moments with that whole thing. And then how she gives him that gift of the feather wood,
Yeah.
which I was like, I want to make one of those. That sounds amazing. And then oh my God, so many full circle moments. He gets her all these for Christmas, all those tools to create more of them and have a business. And she's like, I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. Like it gives her all this confidence and that someone believed in her. And then even Mr. Ponder has one on his desk. And then all the money that she raised doing this, she gives all of that, all of it to Simone when his cello gets smashed.
Yeah.
And just everything is, it's just again the trickle down of like you it's like teach a man to fish and he blah. But it kind of feels like that energy of like if you are showing respect and lifting somebody up, that's gonna carry on. It's gonna be a pay it forward scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, her how well read she was, how she was telling Theo about things he had to read, because she has
Yes.
her bike, which she calls the Noble Invention, which is from some thing she read
Um,
years and years ago, some poem or story or whatever. And she won't let it out of her sight because she found it on the street when somebody seemed to neglect it. She said, I sat there and watched it for like an hour or so, and
no
nobody,
one came for it.
nobody came for it. So I assumed it was up for grabs, and now I won't let it out of my sight because it's her whole world. And they have that moment in the church where she decides to take Theo up on like seeing what this church is all about, but they don't want her to go in with her bike, and it becomes a confrontation. And Theo and the woman who runs the shelter are good at disabling that kind of that bomb that was happening, and then they make it a point so that Theo will sit in the back of the church. So if Ellen does decide to show up to church that week, the Noble Invention doesn't have to go down the row of pews. As you were mentioning, Jason, the bike rental guy, and how he talks about, once a week, I just kind of pump up her tires and make sure everything's going well in the Noble
Full tune
Invention.
up.
Like, again, there are people there helping her, but Theo takes it that next level where it's more about giving her purpose. Like that's the whole thing with the featherwood. And like when she gifts him that, and it has all the different feathers in it. There's that one that's like green or something like that. He's like, I don't really recognize that. And she's
The
like, that's
Hatbird.
from the Hatterbird or something like that. And it's a hat from you know, the
The shelter or
the
whatever.
shelter. Yeah, the lost and found in the shelter. She just pulled the feather from the hat.
So
So
cute.
yeah, I thought Ellen was just really incredible, and her story
Oh, so
about how she
devastating.
lost her baby, like another full circle. The kind of a callback to the witches of the wayward witchcraft for
Wayward.
wayward girls,
Yeah.
that kind of idea, except a little bit different, as she
Yeah.
was homeless and wasn't sent there. But because she was already dealing with her mental issues, she was already homeless. She was with a guy, I forget his name, but like he ends up getting shot. Assuming it sounded like he was trying to do maybe a little bit of robbery or something.
Yeah, it does sound a
It
little
sounded a
odd.
little seedy, but like the night he gets shot, she goes into labor, and like as she's describing this, she has her daughter, but she's also like an older teen,
Right.
as we eventually find out. And like the policeman and the nurse take a little bit of like sympathy for her and at least let her hold her daughter, very similar to Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. But then the daughter is given up, like, without
Take
her
it from.
permission, yeah, given up,
Yeah.
taken from her. And she always wonders about that. So I will say, like, this was a bow at the end when we see
Yes.
this person who is refusing to leave Mr. Ponder's house or his work, knocking on the door and all that. As soon as Theo learned about Willa, I was like, there's no way, with everything else he's doing, with everything he's doing for Lamisha, and even like he starts taking care of the cancer treatments for the girl, the father in the accident, that girl. Like I was like, he does so much for all these people. There's no way he's not finding Willa. So the fact
This
that it
is
came after his death was a little heartbreaking that he didn't get to see it, but at least he had put that in motion
Yeah, yeah, especially since we get that little snippet of him starting to write a letter to Ellen about like on Will's
on Willa's birthday.
birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then deciding not to send it. And I think that was like the right call because it sounded like maybe the wheels were turning, for Willa's return, but
Yeah.
like it sounded like maybe they hadn't really happened yet and he was kind of cart before the horse and like I just again with the breadcrumbs, really, but in a satisfying way, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
it's very powerful. And then even at his funeral, how Ellen is allowed to bring the noble invention all the way down the aisle and all that. Just
Those, I know we talked about this outside of the podcast, like texting. We don't normally do that about the books, but I was like absolutely destroyed to the point where like I like snot. It was just like a hot mess. And again, Barry was like, "Why are you doing this to
yeah.
yourselves?" But like those last like yes, 60 to 80 pages, I was like absolutely a wreck.
It was like all beautiful moments with the recital, and
Yes.
then like the last 20 to 30 pages of the aftermath of his death, I was the crying emoji where it was just streams down both.
Yes.
Like I was just sitting there reading on the couch in the afternoon crying. It was great.
Yeah, I was on the porch and I was like, hopefully I mean, I wasn't being very audible, but I was like,
Um, so let's talk about that final scene. So after Simone's recital, we have the fight in the promenade, and Theo falling to his death. I feel like the reader knew his death was inevitable, but what did you think of how Levi did it?
yeah, I mean, I think we kind of already talked about it,
Yeah,
but it was like shockingly abrupt.
yeah,
Um, I definitely thought it was coming. Like there was even the time when he and Eleanor riding the bikes for their bird watching trip, and he's like, my legs were sore, but I didn't say anything. And I was like, ooh, like maybe he has had a terminal illness this whole time. Cause like you said, we know he's only there for a year, so I'm kind of like counting down the time.
yeah,
But then yeah, it fully wasn't what I was expecting. Of course, but like I sort of assumed it would be something a little bit more drawn out that he could
yeah.
like say goodbyes. So I guess the satisfaction of the letters and stuff was kind of covered that base. But yeah, just totally devastating because it was so abrupt.
And I think it like again the realism of the
Yeah,
situation where and the foreshadowing where we had or he had already woken up before and heard Ellen singing in the promenade. And he didn't know it was Ellen.
right.
Right? It was a person, he could see a person
Couldn't
holding
really
onto a
see.
bike at
Yeah,
like 3 in the morning singing and like he was like, oh, it's a beautiful, like sad voice.
yeah,
So like we know that she went there. And the fact that it's three drunk assholes that are like, oh, I'm gonna take your hat. And then it escalates from there. Like, yeah, it's a dumb, shitty situation, but we hear about those dumb, shitty situations all the time. Like it makes it more believable that something small becomes something major and then it just you pour gasoline on the fire and you never know what's going to happen. So I that whole time I was like I thought he was going to have a heart attack or something like that, like the
yeah,
stress was going to get to him, so the
yeah.
fact that he just fell was so much worse.
Well,
uh
especially because like it takes you from his POV up in his apartment witnessing this, and then it takes you down to like the altercation. And then you're in the altercation for like all of the rest of it. And you're
yeah.
like, oh, we never went back to Theo. Well, this is why.
Yeah, right. uh yeah.
Devastated.
And the fact that again it was the best day of his life, he's saying, followed by that, just yeah.
Too happy. That's
Don't ever
like,
say that. Don't ever be happy. That's
yeah.
that's that's what I'm taking out of this book.
No.
Don't ever be happy. Got it. All right. So then we have the aftermath, those last 30 pages of tears and snot. So in the aftermath of Theo's death, we have the revelation that he is Asher's father and how his mother was the one true love of his life. What did you make of this twist and how it was delivered?
I mean, I think we've pretty much said all of the stuff about this already, but it was like a great full circle moment. I loved that it was letters that he'd written to Asher because that's akin to the bestowals,
Yeah.
and how that's kind of just like his mode of communicating. And I loved how many tie-ins happened, where like I could almost be, I was reading and could almost like see the scene where he's walking through Asher's house and sees um, the framed Zilla response and that picture, and he asks about the picture. And there's like all these things in the way that he'd been asking about Gammy, and like just all the sort of puzzle pieces aligned in such a satisfying way. And then just knowing that like Mr. Ponder knew everything. So he's like, you should just go upstairs. Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
Take your
right.
time, read this, and like, um, yeah, all the revelations were logical. I think I was astounded that this was a debut novel. Like, obviously, he's well versed in other things and he's written before, but like all of these, the way that it was paced, like you said, and the characters and everything just fit so seamlessly. There was very little that I was like, that's a stretch, or like, not very believable.
Yeah.
Everybody was believable, and the way that he tied everyone's connection back to Theo was again a little sun.
Yeah. This is one of those rare times where like the even before I finished reading, or maybe I did finish reading, but like I didn't put the book down. I like immediately went back to try to find that moment where he's looking at the painting with the three letters from the author or from the artist. Because I was like, did they mention who the artists were? Like,
I think they didn't they say Zilla? They didn't?
no, they didn't. At least
Interesting.
not unless I missed it. I did just breeze back. I skimmed back through it, but no, there was no mention of who the artists were. It was like three prominent artists of the time
Okay.
my mother reached out to, and he said, I wrote them a letter, and I think she put in some kind of um
Forward or whatever.
forward, yeah, whatever, cover letter to kind of be like, hey, don't laugh at that. And honestly, how bad was Asher's letter?
Oh my
I
God,
am
it's
six. I
bad.
like to paint. I want to paint.
But also
Asher.
so cute because 6-year-olds are probably like that.
Yeah, it's just more obviously more the fact that he held on to it
Yes.
for all this time. But uh, yeah, so I immediately wanted to go back and like, okay, did I miss? Was there anything very obvious here? Like the fact that this is the first time he's seen that painting that he did, like that's wild too. He gives none of that away. The picture of him painting Asher's mother, and like he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't give any of that away to the
No.
fact that it's so like, oh, this was mom's favorite painting. Like, how do you not break on that? And then as I was looking for this, you also have the moment in Thanksgiving where Asher had done three portraits of his mother, one from like 70, one from 50, and one from
Oh
like
yeah.
25. And Theo's like, I can't tell if she gets more beautiful going backwards in time or
That's like
forward in
so
times.
nice.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's just a nice thing to say. And like, no, that's like his one true love. Uh,
God,
so
what a
it's,
gift for him to be able to like have all this time with Asher and like his family, like if you consider Minette and everything too.
yeah. Um, the thing that broke me though was again, as you said, like it made sense that Theo would have the forethought to write these things in case he
Yes.
never actually brought it up. But when you read it, he said that pulled this expert brought me as an old man to Golden to spend part of my final years with you. And the
Yeah.
fact that like again, that was like he thought he had so much more time. That's the heartbreaking part where it's like even as he's writing this and being like, oh, yep, there's no cancer, there's no heart issue, there's nothing, like I'm gonna be here.
I mean, even like so as the reader, knowing that he only spent a year in Golden, um, and like I guess that it could mean that it doesn't necessarily mean that he would die like that,
Yeah,
that's the impression I was getting, but
yeah.
also that like at almost every opportunity he was portrayed as very spry is maybe too strong of a word, but like able.
He'd go up the
And
stairs kind of
yeah, you go up
situation.
the
Yeah,
stairs, like he's not an infirm or feeble person.
yeah,
So that's what, yeah, I think like the plan was certainly to have longer.
yeah, yeah.
So sad.
It was real tough. But like you said, like this was a bow machine at the end for sure, and they
Big
just kept
time.
coming. But
Yeah.
they were all great things. The other thing, just looking back at my notes, like Asher even mentions at one point that his birth or his birth, his mother's marriage were like a bit of scandal in the family because they could tell that the numbers didn't add up, right? I had a premature baby. Oh, how big was it? 11 pounds. Like, that's not how that works. And then we learned the truth of that. So, like, again, just the fact that there were so many of these points that were well laid for you that if you knew what was happening, it all worked out. But even if you didn't, you're just like, oh yeah, that's just how it was. Like,
Yeah, like all the things that the breadcrumbs that were being laid weren't like suspicious, they
yeah,
were all like very, explainable things.
Yeah. And then the final touch of Theo giving him the portrait of himself
Oh,
that his mother had drawn or painted, I thought was really like, because that's even more of a gift to Asher too, because this is a woman that he knew for so
yes.
long, but like this is like learning that your
Before.
parents used to drop acid. It's
Yeah.
like, well, who were you then? You know, this was when your mother was an artist and
Yeah.
before she was a mother. So it's just a different side of her that he didn't even know about. And he's getting that
Right.
gift after her passing too, which
Right.
I thought was, um, another just incredible final touch for Theo to obviously hold on to it. He loved her, but to know like to have that ready to give, yeah, just
Yeah.
very cool thing. So, um, was there anything else you wanted to touch on? Both of my additional spoilers we had already hit.
Um, I mean, I think my additional thing we've also already hit that he's just like a really good gift giver and just his ability to really like recognize and understand people and then cultivate the things about those people that um I don't know, I guess need to be cultivated so that they have more confidence and I don't know. I just it's such an impressive skill. Um and yeah, what a force for good.
Yeah, and it's like one of those things you read and you're like, oh, there could be like good people in this world. I
Yeah,
could be that good people, and then you go outside, you're like, fuck
maybe.
this. I'll only be good for the people I want to be good for. Yeah, but it was like I think we touched on it with Betty, where it was like it was nice to have somebody we're rooting for again as our main character. This was like it was nice to just like fit back into like a warm blanket. Like it just felt like such a even with the tears and all that, like the emotions are tough, but at the you want that from your writing. Like it doesn't take away from the impact Theo had for sure. The fact that he died, I think it just makes it all more powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, on that note, we're going to move out of spoilers. Moving out of spoilers, we're not quite done with the book yet. Blah, blah, as we have to give it our grade. We do that based on the D&D D20 scale. So 1 is bad, 20 is good, and then we add or subtract a characteristic, modifier, or ability, skill, whatever you want to call it, from the game Dungeons and Dragons that we think best fits the novel. We alternate every episode, so this time it is my turn to go first. And I will say I waffled on this a little bit, but I made this statement last time I did this, and I'm going to stick with it this time. And that is, it happens enough. You don't have to be like such a hoarder of your nat 20s. So I'm going to give this a natural 20 on the dice roll. Like I was nitpicking it. Originally, I went back and forth between that and a 19 because, again, like Tony's whole conversations. Like I felt like that was left field. It pulled me out a little bit. But at the end of the day, like I don't know, maybe that's how it really works. And also there's just so many good things. And as we're just glowing about all the bows that happen at the end, I'm not sure how you can just continue. I don't know. I can't nitpick for one thing when all these other things were so well done. As Taj just pointed out, the fact that it's a debut novel, even for somebody that writes so much, and like another thing on his website, so it's interesting because when I can't rely on Wikipedia for our background, I like have to do more digging, which I hate, but it's also kind of good because you find other information. And he mentioned like he's so thankful for his readers because he's like, when people listen to one of my songs, I ask for your attention for like 3 to 4 minutes and then it's
Mhm.
over. I'm asking you to give me like 15 hours of your
Yeah.
life. And that's incredible that you would be willing to do that. So just sounds like a really humble guy
Yeah.
as well. I'd be interested to see if anything more comes from him or if this is like the
Sure.
story he's been saving up his whole life. Either way, incredible work.
Very good. Yeah.
And kind of on that note, as I think you can see it come through the pages, I'm going to give this a +2 for wisdom. I left this feeling like I need to be better. I need to like have a little bit more of that warmth and eye for beauty and take care of the people you can take care of, whether they're friends or not, but especially the friends. Like make sure you're looking out for those people around you. And it just kind of it left me in such a good place after finishing this story that I think that's so powerful. Like if you can do that in any kind of medium with entertainment, I mean that's the goal, right? You want people to have a response. But to have that kind of walking out again, feeling like I got wrapped in a warm blanket and cried my eyes out for the last 30 pages, it was just so powerful. So I'm going to try to remember Theo's wisdom, and I'm going to try to remember to maybe just, pay a little bit more attention to the beauty that is this world, both nature and in the humans that surround it. So that's a 22 for me. I just, yeah, I think it had high expectations based on how much I'd seen it everywhere, and I think it actually lived up to it, which was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't seen it anywhere, but it definitely was is one that I will recommend for sure. I also gave it a nat 20. Um, I I was so moved by it. It's hard to not give it that high of a score. I think that we've talked a little bit about sometimes how the scoring, like I Goodreads
Yeah.
stars are different to me than this situation, and I'm thinking about this role as um, how um, recommendable it is. And I think that this is a story that is for a lot of people. Um, I think that it's something somebody can find something in there that speaks to them. Um, Amazing that it's a debut novel, like all the things you already said. I think the characters were so believable and realistic, and everything was just so touching and moving. Um, I am giving it, okay, I don't know if this is technically legal because I don't think we've ever done this. Giving it a -1 for religion and a +2 for insight. There aren't rules. We haven't actually like made rules, right? Let me explain myself. So I'm giving it a -1 for religion because there was too much of it for me. I would have, I think that this story could have existed without that. I understand why it was there. I just don't love that. Um, I I do appreciate though two things. One, that he didn't really like beat you over the head with it. Theo didn't beat the people that he was
Yeah.
talking about or talking to over the head. It was very like a you do you, I'm gonna do me, and that's great. That's how I'd like to receive my religion.
Yeah.
um but I also appreciated at the end, like the very last sentence of the entire book is something that Barry and I talk about a lot because he was raised quite Christian, and um, the the way that things are going in the world right now, Christian nationalism is a huge problem, and I feel like it's being usurped. But this sort of brought it back to what I feel like it actually should be. So they're also told that faith, hope, and love are endure, but the greatest of these is love. And like full on the message of this book. So way to round it out. I hated that it like pulled back into the religion thing, but um it was yeah, I guess like you can be a good moral and gracious person without being religious.
Yeah.
So that was the problem I had with that. But I am giving it a +2 for insight because his ability to read people, even if it's a picture, which I guess maybe could be perception, but I'm going with insight because he managed to cultivate all of these relationships. I think obviously first based on the portrait, but then based on his interactions with them and recognizing what each of them needed in terms of a friend. Um, so yeah, I don't know if that's technically legal, but here we are at a 21.
You're always the one stretching the rules on the
I know.
scoring. Yeah, but hey, it's your podcast too. You do whatever the fuck you want. I'll figure out how to record it in the databank. So
I mean,
it works. Whatever, it works. Two things. One, for that last line, I don't know because I went through a country phase for way too long. That's also an Alan Jackson lyric. I mean, obviously, it's something a lot of people say, but faith, hope, and love is the best things he gave us, but the greatest is love. So that's what I thought of when I read it. I was like,
yeah.
is Alan Jackson in the room? Also, if that's Alan Jackson, feel wrong to correct me in the comments, but uh,
Um, It is from, I'm reasonably certain it's actually from the Bible, which with just a little anecdote, I saw something on TikTok where this guy was doing a review of the Holy Bible, which was just hilarious. But this should be the takeaway from the Holy Bible and from
Greatest
this
is
book.
Love, and then Theo. The second
Yep.
greatest is Theo.
Yeah.
So the second thing, so that means our combined score is 21 and a half. So I think that is easily, I would say, the highest book of the year, as we're almost halfway through now. And speaking of being halfway through, I didn't mention this on our previous episode, but it must, was it Betty or the one before? I don't know. We missed our 5 year anniversary. Speaking of
Holy
things,
shit, really?
yeah. So that's on me. I'm supposed to be bringing those things up, but it's May, like middle of May sometime is when this thing
Okay.
started. So yeah, we are now officially in this, I guess if we passed 5 year anniversary, we're in the 6th year of this. I
That
don't know.
is,
I
yep, that's
always
how that would work.
numbers confuse me. So yeah, there's a little add-on for you guys there. So yeah, 21 and a half. Again, if you haven't seen it everywhere, the book is Theo of Golden by Allen Levi. Check it out. This is actually the first surprise book, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, that I've paid full price for both books.
Worth it.
Because I was like, we need to read this story.
Worth it.
So I'm going to pick that up. I mean, full price is still like $15 because thank God for paperbacks, but still. So yeah, if you want to read that, check it out. It is everywhere, or ask us for our copy if you want to be wrapped in a blanket.
Just one additional thing about it. One of my absolute favorite terms now is something Theo said when describing somebody that he was meeting. I don't even remember who now. I do think he did, but I'm not gonna bother to find it. But he was describing how somebody looked, and then he said attempted mustache. And like, I just need that. I need everybody, all the listeners, let's just make fetch happen.
I think I have attempted beard syndrome. A little too close to home on that one. Uh,
Personally attacked.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, so check it out, Theo of Golden by Allen Levi. Now that it has been republished, it is available in lots of places. So check that out. And moving on, we now move into segments as we're not quite done with the podcast yet. So we start with current selection. Taja, what else have you been reading or listening to lately?
I haven't really read much. I've been on a rewatching X-Files kick, and I've been making an army of DRDs crocheted. So
Nice.
I've been like heavy into doing that. But I did start listening to a book the other day, and I listened to it a bunch today called Heretical Fishing. Um,
Okay.
I don't, I'm just gonna say that much because it might turn into a random rec later.
Fair enough. For me, I went on a little personal journey. So like basically the whole month of June, I'm spending one day in Dover or Exeter because that was another thing we did. We had Alden's son's first birthday
Oh yeah.
this last 2 weeks, and we celebrated it 2 weeks early because he's getting deployed. So we did that on a Sunday, and it was really nice.
Good.
The idiots all showed up, and we got to meet see some of his other friends, and his dad was there, which was cool, and Emily's parents and all that. So
Nice.
it was a really nice day. But because of that, and then band practice, we have two shows. Like I'm going over there a lot. The point of this story is to tell a second story, which is when I was coming home on Monday this week, I decided to go like a way I don't usually go, and I was stopping at like bookstores I came across and all this stuff. And one of them, it's like not whatever. It was Books a Million, which you'll remember from the Electric Kingdom in Concord, where they spend the night in Books a Million, whatever. And I like this store because it's basically like it's a regular bookstore where like you can pay full price, which I refuse to do. But it's also like an overflow where it's like if there's a lot of books in print that didn't sell, they get like that and then they sell them cheaper. So the point of this is to tell you that one of the books I read was The Narrow Road Between Desires by Patrick Rothfuss, uh,
Oh,
which is his, what do they call it, novella about Bast from the Kingkiller Chronicles.
yeah.
So this, similar to the Slow
So he's just
Regret.
out here like writing novellas
This
instead
has
of
come out, so Yeah, so this is why I refuse to pay full price for this. I've been
Fair.
because I wanted it because I really like his writing, right?
Yeah.
Between the Name of the Wind, A Wise Man's Fear, and then The Slow Regard for Silent Things, or whatever the other
Yeah.
novella he did in that world. I was like,
Yeah.
these are all great. I want to read more of this. And then
Yes.
he came out with this in like 22 or 23, whatever it was. And it was like $25 for a novella. And I was like, hey, no.
That's too
Like,
much.
I really struggle with Patrick Rothfuss because as a person, at least what I've read and seen on the internet, he seems like a really fucking awesome dude. Like really great dad, really good with like raising money for different charitable organizations and like deals with things
Write
that
that last book.
yeah, and like deals with things that are like not mainstream as far as the charitable situation. So he's raising money for people that really need it and all this. Unfortunately, some of that money raising, he has also given promises when it comes to the third book, which I don't know if he's ever delivered on. Like one of them was that he was going to release the first chapter, and I think people still hold that against him. But long story long is to say that in the overflow of Books a Million, I found this, and it was not $23. So it's like, I'm going to get it. And then I was like, I'm going to read it immediately because I've been waiting for it. And it was really good. It will probably be a random recommendation at some point too. But I think we had already recommended the other novella from him. So it's like, we'll see. We'll see when we get to like episode 125 and we're still don't know what to recommend. But anyway, it was really good, of course. Bast is such an interesting character. If you don't know, he's like the Fae folk who works with Bothe at the inn as he's like in his retired life now.
I need to reread them. It's been so long.
I'm wait. So when I went to Australia, there was a rumor online. This was like 21,
Yeah.
22. There was a rumor online that um, the third book was coming, which I fell for. It's been like 15 years now. So
Yeah.
I went to reread The Name of the Wind and I didn't. But like when it comes out, I will definitely reread them because I
Yeah.
don't remember. But it was interesting too, like the stories involved in this. And the other thing people have issues with this is he had also originally wrote this short story called The Lightning Tree, which this is based off of. Basically, he took that, rewrote it, added like 30,000 more words, and then
Yeah.
sold it. And people got upset because it was like, oh, this used to be a free thing, and now you sold, whatever.
Uh,
Anyway, still, he seems like a really good guy. So trying to give him a break. But yeah, I do want that third book to come out, and it's still really good. So ran through that. The other book I read, which is going to be the random recommendation, I just finished this last night. It is called The Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. And this is one that I've had on my shelves for a long time. I think actually we bought this together when we were in New York, in upstate New York. Because we went to like a store that specialized in like I think black authors and things like that. Jason Reynolds is like very known in that world, and he does a lot of good work for a lot of different people whose voices aren't heard. So what this is, and it's just been sitting on myself because it feels like a bit of a cheat code, if I'm going to be fair, because it's a YA novel that's written in verse. So what that means is, as you can see, it's
oh
like
yeah.
more poetically written, where the design of the page is important. It's kind of like set up differently, and it tells the story of this boy who basically lives in like a projects type situation, and his older brother is gunned down. And that night, he goes into their shared bedroom and he opens the middle drawer that's always been broken and finds his brother's gun. And he decides, because there's three rules to the place where they live. The first is no crying. The second is no snitching. And the third one is get revenge no matter what. So he decides that he is pretty sure he knows who killed his brother. So he's going to take this gun and go kill that person. He's like 15 or 16
I was
years
gonna
old.
ask how old. Okay.
So the point of the story is, though, he gets on the top floor where he lives of the elevator, and as he descends, in the 1 minute of time it takes him to descend, he is visited by the ghosts of people connected to him and to his brother's murder. So it talks about the kind of history of violence in this world and how kind of these rules set up a domino effect of like I got revenge for that guy who then killed me, who then I got revenge for, who then killed you, and like it talks about how the ideologies of what makes a man and how we need to stand up to that. And he gets confronted by all these ghosts as they try to convince him to at least rethink his plan. Like he even meets the idea of like, what if you miss? You've never even fired a gun. Do you even know if it's loaded? Do you know like all this different stuff? So it's like 300 and something pages, but again, the way it's set up, it's really like a obviously quick page turner. But I kind of I took it by floor, which was kind of cool because it's like, okay, and then the elevator stopped again. So like I'd read the floor, and then like kind of sit with it for a little bit and digest that and be like, okay, now let's read the next floor. So it was a really interesting experience that's been sitting on my shelf for a while. And because I knew we were going to try to turn this quickly, I was like, okay, I don't want to get, I don't want to jump into the second book of Mistborn or something like that. It's like, okay, this has been waiting. So if any of that interests you, I've seen it in quite a few places. Again, it's called The Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. And he has a lot of work. Amanda's actually read some of his other books. So he is a very prolific author in that community. So check that out if you want. And on that note, that means we have one last piece of business to get to, which is actually two things. One is to tell you that Taja is leaving us, not forever, but for quite some time for the land of Canada. And because of how the podcast has been falling recently, we would be off for like a month, maybe more, because when she gets back, I'm leaving and it's whatever. So the point of this is to tell you, valued listeners and viewers who have made it this far, that we're going to try to drop a surprise episode. I feel like Connor for real. We're going to drop a surprise episode next week, so check that out. We're going to drop an episode hopefully in the next 7 to 10 days at some point, depending on how our schedules work out. So that means we need to pick a book for the next episode, and Taja has another mystery book that we think is the right size to fit into our time frame. So normally I wouldn't go to this one next, but it is what it is. So Taja, what are we reading?
The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin.
Yeah, so I'm excited for this. This was another one that I found a couple copies in my bookstore. Gabrielle Zevin, of course, was the author of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. She had another book, The Memoirs of a Teenage Something. I forget. I've given it to you, I'm pretty sure. I read that one separately because I just came across it, and actually it was
Teenage Amnesiac.
Thank you. It was really good. It was actually a random recommendation for this show. Nice. So when I came across this, I was like, okay, this gives us a chance to give it another shot. It might be her debut. I'm not 100% sure on that. The reason I said we wouldn't normally do this is it's just another book kind of happening in the real world, where I feel like normally we'd be like, okay, let's mix in a fantasy or a sci-fi or something, since we've been doing this for the last few episodes. But anyway, the little blurb I'll steal from the back is it's a novel that has humor, romance, a touch of suspense, but most of all, love. So perhaps another blanket we'll be wrapping ourselves in. Again, it's The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin. So we are going to try to get that to you.
Major motion picture on my cover? I've never heard of the movie. Have you?
Mine does not say that. No, I did not know that was a thing. I wonder if it's the same title or not. We'll know more next week when I actually do research on the books I give you.
Well, I've just never, I've never heard of that movie.
And honestly, because if it is her debut, like you think Tomorrow would have been like more of a thing. Like I feel like the internet caught that on fire.
This is from 2014, this book.
Yeah. Also, maybe it was like a Hallmark.
Oh,
Who knows?
Would they be able to call that a major motion picture?
I mean, depends on who was tied to it, right?
True facts.
So yeah, we'll figure all that out next episode, which means this is the end of this episode. So thanks for hanging in there, folks. This has been episode 120 of the ABC Pod, the Adult Book Club with Taja and Russell. Keep reading.